My prediction is that if Governor Quinn wins re-election in November, he will seek and be granted from the largely Democratic General Assembly a 4-year extension of the temporary tax increase which he got passed 4 years ago. However, if a Republican wins in November, then the General Assembly will allow him to deal with the 25% revenue drop, which will be part of the expiration of the income tax.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Matt Dietrich, and the clip that just played was me in this very spot on a much colder day in January 2014. At the time, I was making a prediction that turned out to be accurate about the biggest tax question at that time in Illinois. Would the 2011 temporary income tax increase really be temporary? And would it expire as scheduled on January 1st, 2015? We know the answer to that question now. But today, 2 years and 4 months after I made that video, even bigger tax questions loom over Illinois. After the 2014 gubernatorial election, both Governor-elect Rauner and the Democrats who control the Illinois General Assembly had reason to allow the 2011 temporary income tax increase to expire, even though both knew it would create a serious imbalance in the state budget. Rauner had campaigned on a vow to shake up Springfield and saw the expiration of the tax increase as a way to clear the decks and enact sweeping reforms in tax policy, government, and business. Allowing tax rates to fall by 25% on New Year's Day 2015 would put pressure on Democrats to deal with Rauner on issues like workers' compensation reform, property tax relief, and other items in a broad package Rauner referred to as his turnaround agenda. Democrats were happy to let the tax increase expire and hold Rauner to his word that the state would be better off with lower income tax rates. They weren't about to extend the tax increase they had passed 4 years earlier and hand Rauner another reason to rip them for their tax and spend approach. If Rauner believed he could create a balanced budget with $4 billion a year less in tax revenue, the Democrats were only too happy to let him try. So both sides viewed the impending fiscal crisis to their advantage. But what started as a clash of fiscal policy a year ago has turned into a disaster for the state. Rather than duke it out at the negotiating table, both sides have boycotted budget talks entirely. Rauner says he won't deal on the budget until the Democrats pass some of his turnaround agenda items. Rauner repeatedly has said he knows tax increases must be part of the solution, but he won't discuss them without getting reforms first. Democrats, which is to say House Speaker Michael Madigan, say those are non-budget issues that are out of bounds in budget negotiations. So, Illinois for more than 10 months has operated with no state budget, but the state still is spending as if our income tax rates are 25% higher than they actually are. Universities are teetering on the brink of collapse. The state's social service infrastructure is crumbling because the state stopped honoring its contracts as of July 1st, and the Comptroller's Office has warned that the state could be in arrears by $10 billion. That's almost 1/3 of the state's general revenue fund when the current fiscal year ends on June 30th. It's created a truly absurd situation. Last June, Governor Bruce Rauner vetoed all but one part of the budget that had been passed by the Democrat-controlled General Assembly. He said it was $4 billion out of balance, and therefore he had no choice but to reject it. But in February, Rauner released his own budget for fiscal year 2017 that he admitted was $3.5 billion out of balance. The Civic Federation, arguably the most respected fiscal watchdog in the state, said Rauner's budget was a whole lot deeper in the red. With no budget ever passed for the current fiscal year and a new budget due in less than 4 weeks, Rauner and Madigan are driving Illinois full speed ahead toward a second straight year with no budget and, most alarmingly, no serious talk about what'll happen with our income tax. As the clock winds down on FY 2016, here's something to keep in mind. Every percentage point of income tax increase in Illinois brings in $3.2 billion. If we close out the year with $10 billion owed, raising the personal income tax from the current 3.75% to 5%, That's the same amount we paid from 2011 to 2015 under the temporary income tax increase. It'll barely make a dent. But that $10 billion figure doesn't include making up any of the funding missed by higher education and social services providers during the lost budget year of 2016. That easily will add another $2 billion. At some point, the governor and the General Assembly have to deal with this issue. But with less than 4 weeks until a new budget's due, and less than 8 weeks before a new budget year begins, the outlook remains bleak. That's it for this week's edition of Only in Illinois. Thanks for tuning in. I'm not making any predictions on what's going to happen with taxes this year. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more on the next edition of Only in Illinois.